2D side-scrolling brawler was a genre phenomenon that could only have been born in the arcades, where matching bare-bones simple gameplay and familiar control systems with fresh visuals in order to both lure and keep discerning players was the ultimate demand, offering players a chance to romp through an inventive-looking new world or the world of their favorite popular mass media franchise via the familiar but surprisingly malleable setup of walking to the right and beating up everything in your path turned out to be something like the little black dress of boom period arcade design, and on top of it all, it quickly revealed itself as the near-ideal vehicle for cooperative rather than competitive multiplayer, where groups of friends clustered around a single cabinet could be neither enemies nor spectators but allies, creating moments of play that may only have existed for a few minutes but will live forever in the memories of those who experienced them. I'm the Game OverThinker, and these are the best 2D brawlers of all time. Number 10, Double Dragon. Before Double Dragon, most games that tried any aesthetic outside of digital abstraction or anime-inflected cartoon whimsy just couldn't get there. But the first time you saw the Shadow Gang capture Marion and the Lee brothers come charging out of their garage to track them down through the grimy urban dystopia, you knew you were experiencing something new and special. It wasn't so much that stomping through a semi-realistic city setting, wailing on enemies with bats, knives, and chains was any less fantastical than any other arcade experience, but it was a different kind of fantasy altogether and set the stage for an entire genre to follow. Number 9, River City Ransom. Cult classics don't come much cultier than this NES gem from Technos, an English localization of Danton Neketsu Monogatari from the Kunio-kun series, where previous ports of the franchise like Renegade had remixed the graphics and settings into a gritty urban warfare scenarios a la The Warriors. River City Ransom kept the slapstick-infused high school gang fight setting intact, graphically swapping out the Japanese schoolboy aesthetic for something more like the weirdo offspring of Grease and The Outsiders. The result was almost too bizarre for gamers of the era to wrap their heads around, a 2D beat-em-up that was also an open-world, free-roaming action RPG where stats overrode button mashing and you spent almost as much time buying lunch, shopping for books, going to spas as you did punching your way through River City's surprisingly robust teenage hooligan population. But the adventurous players who fell in love with River City Ransom back in the day transformed it into a retro gaming touchstone today justly recalled as one of the console golden age's creative high points. Number 8, X-Men Arcade. The ultimate superhero arcade experience, hilariously styled around a version of the X-Men cartoon that never made it past the pilot phase, and featuring everybody's favorite X-Men characters and also, for some reason, Dazzler. But let's not be coy. What made this a winner was the faithful recreation of the franchise at its Burn Claremont peak and the big roster of variable player characters. Yes, like literally every other game on this list, you're basically just walking to the right and cycling through a handful of attack options, but the key to 2D brawler sustainability was style and atmosphere, and X-Men Arcade had it in spades, especially if you could get a group together and recreate the authentic feel of seeing a whole X-Men team power through their classic foes. There's a reason why finding a full-size 6-player cabinet in the wild and playing through with a full squad will always be on the bucket list for an entire generation. Number 7, Dungeons & Dragons Shadows of Mystara. Take D&D's kitchen sink fantasy aesthetic, process it through an anime-inspired visual filter because 90s arcade gaming, and put the whole thing in the hands of Capcom during their untouchable mid-90s peak, and you get Tower of Doom, which was a good game in its own right, but Shadows of Mystara improves on it in every conceivable fashion. More characters, more gameplay options, greater variety of locations and enemies to fight your way through, but what makes the game truly stand out in its genre is the rare, and even more rarely successful, integration of RPG-style elements like weapon, armor, and magic customization, leveling up, and item shops. There's a lot of good reasons why arcade games didn't typically go in for that kind of system, but when it works, it creates a terrific experience for the right kind of gamer, and when those right kind of gamers found a Shadows of Mystara cabinet in the arcades, or picked up that sweet digital collection more recently, they often found a brawler with something extra that became one of their most beloved experiences. Number 6, Final Fight. Looks like Street Fighter, plays like Double Dragon, nuff said. Grounded firmly in the era of action storytelling where a former pro wrestler turned big city mayor taking to the streets to rescue his daughter from a gang was considered fairly subtle by video game standards, Final Fight delivered a rush of vivid locations, enjoyable gameplay, and characters so memorable, the game remains a classic and one of the most addicting entries in its storied genre. Number 5, Bad Dudes. The president has been kidnapped by ninjas, and they can keep him. Just calm the hell down. Bad Dudes is probably Data East's crowning achievement in original IP, a beat-em-up that ratchets up the immediacy of the action by swapping out 3D movement for leaping between upper and lower fields and piling on the enemies in overwhelming waves. The result plays fast and satisfying as the schlocky B-grade martial arts film it borrowed much of its aesthetic from, with sending whole teams of ninjas flying with a single kick having seldom been such an immediate rush. Is Bad Dudes cheesy? Absolutely. But like a lot of actual comfort food, it wouldn't work if it wasn't. Number 4, Streets of Rage. 2D brawlers were invented for the arcades, and in many respects that's the ideal place for a genre primarily built around stretching a single gameplay scenario across multiple levels, distinguished primarily by graphics and difficulty curve. But the fact remains that one of the best examples of the form ever created, the Streets of Rage series, was developed exclusively for consoles by Sega. Crossing Final Fight's fighter-inspired speed with Double Dragon's urban dystopia fantasia somehow evens out into a series that trumps them both in terms of arresting visuals and brutal addictive gameplay. Yes, in this genre, setups where you punch and kick your way through a Japanese game designer's imagined reimagining of a crime-ridden, trash-strewn, graffiti-covered American metropolis are a dime a dozen, but Streets of Rage is the pop art pinnacle of the form, and the third installment is where the series itself reached its ceiling. The characters are bizarre and unforgettable, the music and sound effects are iconic, and there's even a kangaroo. Who can argue with that? Number 3, The Simpsons Arcade. My all-time favorite arcade experience. What's wild about The Simpsons Arcade, other than being genuinely fun to play, was that it feels reverse-engineered from the actual series into something more like a conventional cartoon license aimed at kids who weren't the intended audience, taking the tropes and characters of the show and reconfiguring them into a more conventional good guy versus bad guy setup. It's just so fun to play, and if you can get a full group together to do the whole family and execute the team-up moves, it just doesn't get better than that. Yes, even though Marge is hitting people with a vacuum cleaner, Mr. Smithers as a bomb-throwing diamond thief in a cape makes no sense in the context of the franchise, and Sideshow Bob hilariously shows up as a random good guy NPC. In fact, canon incongruous stuff like that is part of the charm, in some respects making it the some enchanted evening of Simpsons video games. Number 2, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. For a minute there, the only Ninja Turtles game anyone had ever heard of was the one that was just too hard to be fun and didn't really feel like the series, and that was kind of baffling at the time. The Turtles were so perfectly suited to a video game, it felt like there should be a dozen great games about them. So like a lot of kids my age, the first time I saw this up close and personal, it was like they made it just for me. No water level, just pick your favorite turtle and smash the crap out of wave after wave of foot soldiers. And they even had the right music, sort of. Even though they themselves weren't created for video games, Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael, and their entire world of allies, enemies, sewer layers, city streets, and technodromes were almost ideally suited to the media and to the arcade brawler genre in particular, and this landmark quarter muncher, and in many respects its superior NES port, could only have possibly been bested by, well... Number 1, TMNT Turtles in Time. The arcade follow-up to one of the best brawlers ever after a pair of console-exclusive entries took an already winning formula and blew it out in all the best ways. Better graphics, better animation, new moves, a greater variety of enemies, and a time travel gimmick that allowed for fresh new locations like the Old West, pirate ships, and more. Gamers will argue forever over whether the arcade version or the SNES version were superior. I'll personally give it to the console one, based purely on the ability to customize the shade of your characters and the Mode 7 enemy throwing mechanic, but they're both classics in their own right for a reason. Sure, the first arcade game will always have more core significance, but as a gameplay experience, Turtles in Time may be the best licensed game ever, and it's easily the best 2D brawler of all time. And that's the list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Tell us about it in the comments, and suggest other lists you might like to see. Remember to like, subscribe, share with all your friends, and please consider donating to the moviebob Patreon to support this and other series like it. Hey gang, here's a question that keeps coming up. If your handle is moviebob, where are your movie reviews? Well, my old reviews are in a lot of places. You'll find many of them on my YouTube channel, but you'll find the brand new ones on geek.com, an awesome site that's also your one-stop news source for science, TV, gaming, technology, nerd culture, the works. You can find all my reviews directly by going to geek.com/author/bchipman, because that's my real name, and you can get regular updates on all my reviews and all of geek.com's other great content by signing up for their kick-ass newsletter at subscribe.geek.com. And don't forget to also subscribe to the Geek.com YouTube channel, where you'll find the videos that accompany my reviews and tons of other great content too. Remember, that's Geek.com, the Geek.com newsletter, and Geek.com on YouTube. Make sure you don't miss out on all the latest MovieBob reviews. You can also check out my own new website, MovieBob Central, where you'll find my blog, links to all my work, and shop for my books, ebooks, and future MovieBob products. And please remember to like these videos, share them with all of your friends, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching another MovieBob production.